Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. Short follow-on on the Atari 65XE keyboard problem here. These function keys, they are handled by a different IC. They're not scanned in the same way that the main matrix is for the main, keys here. And as a result, you seem to get a problem more often than not, just relating to the function keys on these. Now, I covered a previous fix here, did some fixes to the membrane with some conductive ink to fix the main matrix. That still works, no problems at all. We're here about 4 or 5 years later, I think, and the function keys have played up again. Now, I kind of suspected this was going to happen because, as I mentioned in that video, one of the things I found is it was really marginal. What I mean by that is, I tried some of the transistor mod you used to deal with this issue, and it worked for a few minutes or 10 minutes or so, and then it didn't work, and then I had to resort to fitting resistors instead, and it worked for obviously 4 or 5 years, but now we're in a position where it's failed again, and I think it's going to be the same problem. But what I'm going to do, well, I've ordered 2 things. One of them, I've ordered a brand new membrane. It's a third party one, so it's not the Mitsumi ones that shipped from Atari, so that will, I'm pretty sure, solve the problem. But in the first instance, what I'm going to do is just show you that this is not working, certainly with the option key, to disable basic, that doesn't work. And obviously I can't get into the test mode because of that. What I'm going to do is take the keyboard to pieces, remove the membrane, and the trace, there's a common trace that's on the top side here that goes to all of these, the common connection that goes to every single one of those, and it goes all the way along here, and it comes all the way down like this, all the way down to a point down here. It's a really long trace. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of copper tape here with a wire soldered onto a very fine wire, and route that wire right up to the point here or over here, so that I'm cutting out the really long trace that goes in a U shape, if you like, round there. And I suspect that single change of doing that, the copper tape where I stick it over the trace, I'll use a tiny bit of conductive ink on either side just to join it up, but I suspect after doing that we'll cut out so much of the resistance there that these will probably just work again. I won't need to do anything. So yeah, we'll do that, and I'll have the new membrane on standby. I might be able to show it you within this video, and if it fails again, obviously I'll swap it out, but I'm going to just see what I can do to get this original membrane working again. So I'll switch it on, holding down option, and you can see that didn't work. This is the thing, so I'll try it again. Yeah, not working. Now I've got the meter there, and I'll show you what I showed you last time. We've got the meter on volts DC. If I just lift the keyboard up, so the option key, I can't even see it now, I'm having to hold this a funny way. If I just jam this ground connection here, say, in there, is that going to make a good enough connection? Hopefully it will. If I just measure, I think it's the second one, I'm going to try and not block the shot here, the second one down there is the option, and if I press option, you can see that's 1.373, press option, goes down to 1.165. That's not low enough. It needs to be really around the 1 volt mark, ideally. I think when I got it working before, I had it working where it was just a touch lower than that. It was like 1.14 or something, that was working. Whereas now it's not. I can press it. 1.164 is as low as we can go. So let's tear the membrane apart. So we need to get the million screws out of the thing. I hate taking these apart. What is it with Atari, the way they do these keyboards? It drives me nuts. I think Commodore, some of the Commodore ones are the same as well, with loads of screws like this. Not all of them. I much prefer keyboards like the Archimedes and the Amstrad, where you got the plastic clips, and it's literally a 2 minute, less than 2 minute, 60-second job to separate the keyboard. Anyway, just pay close attention in case any of these are a different size. I don't think they are. I think they're all the same length and stuff here. To be fair, it was less than 2 minutes to get inside that. Something else I'm just going to do before I mess with the membrane. So we're on resistance mode here, so you see you've got 0 ohms there. I'm just going to measure across these contacts. So if we just hold it there like that, you see, hang on, 260 ohms. That's a little bit high. Now some of these are showing lower. 300, 400 ohms maybe. 230 ohms. So yeah, those are a bit higher than I would like, actually. 200 ohms, and I think this last one was quite high, actually. 260 ohms. Let's just test a normal key on here, one that's scanned by the matrix. 160. I think about 160 is what you perhaps want to... Yeah, 160, look. 160 is probably not going to be an issue. That one's a bit higher, 170. That one's a... That's not too bad, 170 against coming down. But these ones here seem a bit higher, don't they? They're like 200 ohms or more. Look at that, 300. So I think what I'm going to do here is just press these and just rub gently with a piece of paper and then remeasure, just to see if we can get that any lower. IPA would perhaps make things worse, perhaps, I don't know. Cleaning these with IPA is generally a good idea, and we clean the whole matrix that way, and all the other keys are alright, but it seems to be these ones here, so I'm just going to rub a bit of paper, let's just see. So just a dry piece of paper here, and I'm just going to literally put it like that, press, and then just slide. Can you see that? There's little black lines. So press it down and then just slide a little bit. Just do that a few times like that. We'll just remeasure it, just in case it's kind of some surface oxidisation. Now, it could be because of the way it's read. You know, it's not scanned the same way as the matrix. Look at that, 200 ohms. Yeah, that's made a difference already. And it's going up. Oh no, it's not. It's gone a little lower, look. And obviously there's a bit of, you know, it depends where the probes are, how hard you're pressing. Those are all factors. But anyway, that has reduced. So I'm going to do the same thing on these other ones. We'll just quickly, loosely reassemble it. And then just go see what difference that makes. It might not make any difference. But it might mean I don't need to swap the membrane out, actually. It could all be just about these. So I'm just going to do that on every one. It's an annoying problem though, it really is. If this is the issue here, this change in resistance, changing the membrane ain't going to solve that, is it? This is the thing. So what you're looking at, new plungers maybe. The other thing you could do is coat these with something, I don't know. Conductive ink is not going to stay on there as you press it because it's silicone, it's rubber. It's going to come off, but you can get kits to repair the, you know, conductive carbon things on these. So anyway, let's give that a try. I've only got a couple of screws holding it in, but this is the bit I seriously hate on these. Trying to hold the keyboard, not put too much pressure on this, bend it down nice and straight, try and reconnect the darn thing. It's what makes it difficult is it's not very long. If this was a longer connector, there we go, it's in, it would be a bit easier to reconnect. Well, let's try that. So the power LED is on. And of course, if this does work, I can measure the, like I'm holding it down now, I can measure the voltage again. That's worked, look, there you go, that's what it is. That is really annoying. Am I going to have to do this every 4 or 5 years? Oh, I hope not. And of course, it's a bit of egg on my face because I've ordered a blooming membrane. Do you know how expensive they are? £30. Oh yes. Sounds fantastic. Stereo here with a twin pokey setup. So let's switch that off. I'm just going to disconnect the SIO to SD because I think, yeah, that's when you disable basic, isn't it? If you press that on now, doesn't that go into test mode? I forget. I always forget which key does it here. Yeah, that's gone to test mode. And obviously the reason I want to do that is so I can test the keyboard. Select, start, or reset. So we'll do select, yeah, select is working, and then we do start, keyboard. And yeah, those keys at the top now, so we'll do the, oh hang on, start takes you back out, so let's do select, was it gone? Select, start, so I've got to press anything apart from help here I think, haven't I? Or reset, so I'll do start, we'll do select, do option, yeah it works now, press reset, back out. So there we go. I have learnt something here, and hopefully you have as well. That the, you know, as a follow-on to part one, I'll stick a link up there. You know, the previous time we looked at this. You can do the things I discussed in that video. It also explains why, when I fitted the transistors, that didn't solve it entirely. It worked for a short period of time. I think it's all about the current, the level of current that's passing through with when you press these, and it, you know, it pulls it low. It just helps kind of speed up the oxidization process. That's why these become a problem. I'm not really sure what the permanent ideal solution is, but the fact that this has lasted literally 5 years, it could be more than 5 years, I'll stick it up top left. But the fact it's lasted all that time, I think it's good enough for me. I'm quite happy. The conductive ink we added to fix this is still working rock solid, stable. I can show you that in a minute before I reassemble this, actually, because you'll see I haven't touched it, and all the keys do work. You know, I tested that before I started tinkering with the function keys, actually, just to make sure it wasn't something else on the membrane, but all these keys work perfectly. It was just about the function keys. So I might try and order some replacement plungers, actually, you know, the bits with the carbonised pads on, just to have a few spares, because I have no spares for this Atari. I've ordered some chips, actually, and the reason I was looking at this 65XC, well, A, I want to play with it, but B, I've had a board for an 800. And I just wanted this to hand to test with the Iota SD, but also in case I want to borrow one or two of the chips out of this to test that other board. Anyway, that'll be another repair, that 800 board. So I almost forgot, let's just have a look at the difference in the voltage levels now, actually, as we press that key. So I'll again just jam the ground in there if I can. It's like between, you know, the shield prong and the ground plane there. So if I just measure the right point, you might not be able to see what I'm doing properly here. Let's just move that so you can see. There you go, 1.35, and if I press the button, look at that, 0.8. That's way lower. That is the problem. So those resistors I added, you know what, they don't need to be there, but I'm going to leave them there because they're assisting helping pull it a little bit lower, and I'd rather that was in place because it may make it last longer before I have to clean the contacts again. Yeah, so huge difference, and that's what you want. You want less than a volt, really, I think. Just holding that on there to see if that changes, because you know what, that could be a clue as well. If that started climbing upwards, you know, you kind of got a problem, but I don't think so. It seems to be hovering around there, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm happy with that. So coming back to what I don't like about these screws, what you've got to be careful of is you don't over screw them. You know, if you tighten these too much, the plastics have gone brittle with age. These Ataris always suffer with this. The number of Atari STs I've taken to pieces, and there's a screw, either a screw missing from the keyboard, or there are screws that just go round in a couple of places. And it's that very reason that someone's been in there before and they've over-tightened them, just one or two of them. So yeah, you know, use something like this, don't put too much force, you get to the end, just stop. And because you've got so many of them, they don't need to be over tight. You know, they'll all help hold it if they're not really tight. So keyboard's all done. If you haven't seen previous videos, I did a stereo pokey mod to this, and we got the ultimate 1 megabyte mod there. There's loads of other things you can do. You know, you can add like VGA type outputs, you know, RGB mods and things, and there's so many different mods you can do to these. Lotharac is the website you want to check out for Atari 8-bit stuff. Him and Sebastian have created some absolutely amazing mods and upgrades and things for these. There's another channel you should check out as well. I'll stick a link down below, and I forget, I always get this name wrong. I think it's Flashy Jazz Cat or Jazzy Flash Cat. I don't know, I'll stick it up there. I can never remember it. I know who he is, and I really enjoy his videos. He always does a good job. He's always fixing and upgrading these Atari 8-bits, so it's a channel that you absolutely need to subscribe to if you're interested in this 8-bit Atari stuff. I can't get that back in now. Oh, cheeses me off every time I come to do this connector. I want the keyboard to stay upright while I do it. I'm going to come a crop at just disconnecting and reconnecting that at some point, I'm sure. Right, let's put that back in place. Disconnect this again so that I can get into test mode. And hold down Option. And that's not working. Oh joy. So take two, all it is, disconnect the ribbon, reconnect the ribbon, now it's working. And I think what I put that down to is the resistance on the edge connector there. Yeah, there we go. You know, you get a subtle amount of resistance on the edge connector, that's going to add to the problems. It's all about resistance. Resistance on the trace, resistance on the connector, and resistance on the, you know, the carbonised plunger bit. So let's hit start. So we'll do that one, that one, that one. Yeah. It is also worth mentioning the ST keyboard video I did, because you'll note on that there was an issue where when these have been cleaned, sometimes you press the key and it doesn't register, and then you've got to do a bit of like wobbling around like that. You can't really do it on here. You can on the ST, you can like wobble a bit, but also just absolutely hammering the key, and it's not working at all, and then eventually it starts to work. That is doing more or less what we just did, rubbing a bit of paper on the surface. What you're doing is just wearing and making the surface a bit more even, but mostly wearing the surface a little bit so that you get a lower resistance. So you could argue that maybe that would work here if I'd just kept hammering that option key when it wasn't working, you know, for a good minute or something, and then tried it. We probably would have found it would have worked. So bear that in mind as well. Watch that video. I'll stick a link up there to that video. But that is working. So let's get the lid back on. So ultimately, if you can buy a replacement membrane, it's always a good idea. You can see it got a modern replacement on here from Retronics. So I think they're based in the EU somewhere. And yeah, it looks really nice. I've just tested it with a single plunger like this, and it seems to work okay. So I'm going to swap this out, but the video doesn't end there, because I'm going to go back to the membrane. I'm going to see if I can fix the option key on that one, just by doing what I said, you know, suggested, which is to maybe take from a point up here somewhere, or up here, and then just have a wire going straight down to the point here, and bypass the you know, all of that long trace, and I suspect that will probably solve it, because I think that's the problem there. But yeah, so you get the benefit of two things here. One, you can see a replacement membrane, we'll fit it, we'll test it. So it's been a few weeks since I did that keyboard membrane swap on this. We'll hold down option, cold test here. Let's see if it'll go into self-test. And yes, it has. So yeah, I opted to swap that membrane. I could have just kept going on it, you know, repairing it and stuff, but I think I'm happier actually having a new membrane on this. You can see every key is working. Yeah, backspace. Shifts don't register unless you hold down a letter at the same time. And the backspace, sorry, not backspace, brake, doesn't do anything, but you can test that when you come out in basic. So here we are ages later on the new bench. If I hold down option, yep, that's worked. As you can see there, do select, start. Yeah, so the new membrane is working perfectly. And as I mentioned, you've got to hold down the shift or the control key. If you press shift on its own, it doesn't do anything. If you hold shift and press A, you can see the, not shift, sorry, control. The control key shows there. So that's how you test those. Same with the right shift. Press it, doesn't do anything, but press it and a letter. Yeah, I'm going to show you an excerpt of the schematics here. One other thought crossed my mind: you could potentially adjust the size of these three resistors. Those go to S0, S1 and S2 on the GTIA. So this is how the three buttons are detected. It's via a resistor into a dedicated pin on the GTIA. So I reckon if you, I'm trying to think about this, it's a problem detecting going low, isn't it? It doesn't go low enough. If that resistor was potentially, think about this, reduced in size, then there's less stress against it trying to be pulled low. So that might actually work if you were to reduce those resistors or put a resistor in parallel with each one of them, or the one that's causing you a problem here. You may be able to get around it that way. Anyway, I'm very pleased with that, so let's get the lid off. I'm going to show you a cartridge I picked up as well. It was described as untested. I may see if I can get that scratch off there with some bicarb of soda. An interesting point here that I'd forgotten about. When this came to me, these posts were broken off here, but you can see they're epoxied. And they've stood the test of time, 8 years or so. It's still good. Yeah, you can see we've got 1.358, press option. Look at that, 0.2 volt. So that's the difference it made with a new membrane. And I'm putting that down to not the issue we first covered in this video. So in other words, you do get some resistance with the carbonised surface on the silicon there, the button, you know, the black button, the plunger that makes a connection. The resistance there is pretty much what we're seeing. 0.2 of a volt though. So most of the voltage drop would have been from the membrane itself. But nevertheless, the plunger does, as you saw, introduce its own resistance. So when we cleaned it up, it worked reliably. But as I say, I think if you change the resistor sizes of the 3 signals that go into the GTIA, you'd see a difference here as well. But anyway, that works fine with that new membrane. So yeah, it's 30 quid, but I'm not going to have a problem with that again, I don't think. I shouldn't need to revisit this. And it's still got the modification in place with the transistors that we did in an earlier video. One tip I will give you, I've switched this off, it can be a little bit tight, you know, trying to fold this, you've got to fold it in just the right place. But in fact it looks a bit funny now the way it's bent over. It's kind of bent over a bit, so yeah, I better test that once I get that in place, just to make sure it is still working. Let's just test the stereo pokey. It's a while since I've heard the stereo pokey. And I'll just connect the SIO to SD up. This had a firmware update recently. But I say recently, perhaps not for everybody else, but recently for me, they updated it. And I've forgotten how you do this as well now. Don't you have to hold the shift button down there? I'm not sure. I think that's to get the menu. Yeah, that is how you do it. Let's have a look at M, other, A, XEX. Yeah, there's space to page down, isn't it? Let's try Pang, because that should work. So Pang's in slot 1, and you've got to hold down help. X reboot. I'm going to hold down option. Yeah, there we go. What? That's alright. I wonder what that was then. That was like a crash thing or something, a crash log or something like that. No, it wasn't. It was just a bit of information. Right. That sounds amazing. I think it's automatically detected the stereo pokey, to be honest. Sounds that way. Yeah, I'm sort of hearing sounds from the left and different sounds from the right. I need to hit start, I think. And again, I might need to swap controller over, I was going to say. Yes, this is a bit homebrew, isn't it? Recent, as in the last 5 years. Oh my god, this is so much harder than the arcade version. Look how many balls there are now, it's nuts. Do you get health? Yeah, you do get an energy level. So I guess you can just take a few knocks. Yeah, I had a shield, that's why it wasn't going down then. It's going down now, though, when they touch me. Look at this. This is definitely a reimagination thing rather than arcade perfect. The number of these balls I'm dealing with here is just insane. It sounds incredible with those 2 pokies. Yeah, amazing. You can obviously get a replacement pokey as well now, like a, you know, an FPGA based one. And in fact, when I showed you that other channel, Jazzy Flash Catty Jazzy channel, whatever the name is, I forget. If you check his channel out, that was the video I showed actually, just for a second or two. So he has a video on that. I think it's called the Pokey Max, isn't it? I might get one of those at some point and see if I can compare it to a real pokey. I'm out of lives or energy. Just let him die. It sounds great though. That crunchiness, you can't get that on other systems. The C64 could do it, because if you listen to the game Wizardry on the C64, there's a crunchiness that sounds just like that. It's like a harpsichord sort of sound, but not. It's very 80s though. It just sounds amazing. There we are. How did you turn around? You can't. Seemingly you can't turn around, you can only go one way. What kind of version of Iridium is this? Or Uridium? What? whole thing wraps around. So they've got it so you can't scroll to the left-hand side. I need to turn that down. It's about to blow my eardrums out. Oh my goodness, what happened to this? It's quite hard to see what you can crash into and what you can't as well. Like, is that solid? Oh, that's obviously solid. Do you land? Oh my goodness. Right, let's just try and fly along here and see if we can find somewhere to land. Oh my god! It's hard to know what you're doing here, like, is there something... There isn't. I think you just fly along and blow up stuff. It's not like any other version of it. Anyway, now we've tested that, let's disconnect the SIO and try this Atari mics. I may have shown this before, I don't remember. All I know is I got this and it was described as untested. Not the easiest things to fit these cartridges. There we go, let's plug that in, switch that on. Right, there we go. It took about 10 reinsertions of the video cable to get it to display properly on my TV. Yeah, Ball Blaze is one of those games where you can hear how crunchy the pokey is. Set 5. That's a two-player game, isn't it, I think? Because no one's moving the bottom player. Bruce Lee, I'm not sure if we looked at that on a previous Atari 8-bit video. Yeah, I think we did, because I can remember saying how it looks very Commodore-like. It looks just like the C64 version at the start. I mean, everything there, it just looks straight like the C64 one. It's maybe a tiny bit slower at movement than the C64 version. You've got some good games on here. Encounter, I think, isn't that the one I played of Tom Meads's? It was a disc. I think it might have been a disc. It could have been a cassette game. That 3D battle tank sort of thing. Hang on, did I press the wrong button there? Oh, this might be the game that doesn't work. There's one of these games that doesn't work on here. Encounter. Start, so press start. If I can find it. Yeah, I think this is one of those games that glitches out. You know, it's a DIY cartridge this. Someone has made this themselves and pushed a load of different games to it. And one or two of them, like this, have issues. International Karate. I don't know how I did that. I don't know why. You pull down and fire when you suddenly turn around that way. That's not what I was trying to do. Hang on, got to smash something here. Get ready for war, what do we do? I don't know what you do there. That was a bit pointless, wasn't it? Guess we don't go to another location. I thought we did. Maybe I'm not good enough. So start. Got to see if I can work out, are there any keys for this? I suspect not. It's going to need the controller, isn't it? Yeah, like, the keys will not do anything. Oh. What gets me, every single version of this, trying to work out how you get over there. Oh, I guess you've got to jump. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you jump over the gap. Maybe you go... Hang on. Oh my god, he can't even get up there. He's a moron. There we go. Let's get that. And then go onto that. And then go down. And then jump over there. Wait for all those things to go away. Oh, how do you do that? This is an interesting shape as well. It's doesn't compute to my eyes. I'm like, what on earth's that? Atari Swan demo. What on earth's that? Power without the price. Ooh, nice. And I can't remember how much it showed when I upgraded it to 1 meg. I might not have even covered that. You hold down help when you power it on, and you get this menu here. This was created by the Jazzy Flash Cat guy that I mentioned earlier. Is it Flashy Jazz Cat? Jazzy Flash Cat? Catty Flashy Jazz? I don't know. I've got a blind spot for his name. I'm going to have to print it out and stick it on the screen, I think. Yeah, so he did the menu for this, and a few other things as well he's done work on. It's incredible work. So you can go all through the different menu options here. You can see you can just have 320k, 576, 1088. I'll stick with that. I'm not sure what that is. Stock XE. Yeah. Anyway, you can change that. The system type. Spartados X. You can enable or disable that. VBXE. I'm not sure what VBXE is. Oh, that's your RGB output, isn't it? I think. Yeah, I don't have that. Stereo sounds enabled. Covox. I might need to look at getting one of those. Where'd you connect that though? Maybe that goes into the SIO port. I don't know where else it would go on here because I don't think there's any other ports on the back, is there? There might be another port next to the cartridge one. Like a little user port. Maybe it goes there, I don't know. Side hardware. Yeah, so that's an interface, you know, a cartridge I think plugs in. And it gives you, I think, IDE. Or something similar to that. So I might get one of the side cartridges. I'm going to look at one of the side 3s, I think originally I was going to get one of those. And then you say it's ID there. Yeah, and then you can choose what goes in the basic slot. And you completely override that. So I mean, I've got basic in there, but you can put the cartridge in there. And you can also choose what goes in the missile, you know, the game slot. Because this has got I think, hang on, maybe it hasn't. I think the XEGS has a game, but the XE doesn't have it. So I've got missile come on there. I can't remember how you get into that though. Let's try switching it off. I'm not going to save any settings there because it's already set. It may be a case of just holding a key down. Let's try select. One of them hopefully would bring up that. It's not that one. Let's try holding an option. No, I think option just disables basic, doesn't it? Yeah, and I figure whilst we're here, let's have a look at this cartridge. I think it just prizes open. It looks like there were no screws holding the lid on. Let's just put a flat blade here and just twist slightly. Like that, that's it. It may have been glued in there. It's pretty much press fit, isn't it? Get the wrist strap on. So we've got two EEPROMs there, haven't we? Just turn the TV down a bit. Yeah, the flash, you know, EEPROMs. 29F040, 512k each. So I've got a megabyte of storage on there. And then we've got two GAL equivalents here, ATF 16 V8s. So those are doing the address decoding for these two ROM chips, and it's just held on, you know, pressure fit there. Yeah, there's some flux on there that could do with cleaning off, but anyway, I'll leave that as it is. Yeah, they're quite cool, these. There's a few sellers on eBay of these Atari Max cartridges. There must be software that you can get where you can, you know, select all your different games and actually write, you know, create an image, which you can then write to these two chips here. Is it going to clip together? yeah, it just clips together. It's quite nice, that. I'm guessing the plastic case here is not 3D printed. I might try and get another one of those shells for this diagnostics cart, although, well, it's a different size look, so yeah, it's bespoke to this. Yeah, so hopefully you found that interesting. If you'd like to support the channel, please see the Coffee and Patreon links down below. I'll catch you in the next video.